I'll give you an update on what's happening in the community. If we start from what's happening offshore, we've got 250 plus people divided between Nauru and PNG, all men in Port Moresby now. There's one man on Manus, he's married, he's a Rohingya, married to a local girl, and he will stay there and acquire citizenship. The rest of the men are in Port Moresby. Some are waiting for resettlement to Canada and to the US, and others are stranded with no durable pathway. And that would be the same for Nauru. Men and one lady, I think, still remains there. No children, no families. So we are concerned about what will happen to people stranded offshore. And then you've got people who are sent medevac from offshore to Australia, some of whom, of course, Kangaroo Point detention, hotel detention has closed, and people were transferred either to Melbourne or to the BITA, which is in Pinkenba. And BITA stands for the Brisbane Immigration Transit Accommodation. That's even a wrong term. It's really no longer a transit. It was set up to, it's set up very near to the airport for airport turnarounds. I used to work for immigration, so I know this. But it's now 6-foot fences and quite difficult to visit, permission, all that kind of thing. So out of the medevac group, we have a couple of dozen people still at the BITA, extremely, extremely sick. We had 1 or 2 men go to the US 2 weeks ago. So the flights to the US as part of the offshore resettlement is ongoing. It hasn't stopped. It's slow, but it's ongoing. So people who have been approved for the US will go or are going. There are 200 plus people in a holding pattern to the US, which means that they've done their medicals, but the flights are not arranged yet, or the medicals have been rescheduled, they're waiting for that, or they've applied for merits review and they're waiting for that to happen. The target at the moment is 1250. It is our understanding the Australian government, of course, is keen for more people to go to the US. So they're kind of pressuring us as the community to do their dirty work for them, like talk to people in the community, start thinking about going to the US. Well, the reality is that if people are really unwell, the US is not the best place for them to be without Medicare equivalent in Australia, and why should we be dumping them? But for those who can manage, it is a permanent visa, and there will be family reunion after 12 months when they can get their green card. Apart from that, there is no other resettlement option. Canada is a pathway, but it's not a government decision. It was a community initiative that we took up 2 years ago when a Canadian lady, Laurie from Vancouver, contacted Sister Jane Keogh, a Brigidine nun, who then contacted me and said, this lady would like to start a sponsorship scheme. How do we do that? So I said, yeah, it's a good pathway. It really abrogates the government, right, of its responsibility for resettling people. But if it's a pathway for the men, let's do it. So that has been ongoing. The first group of people, there are about 10 of them who have completed their medicals and fully vaccinated. We were anticipating the borders to reopen for Canada next month. However, Justin Trudeau has just called a snap election, hasn't he? So we'll have to wait and see the outcome. If the Conservatives get in, it's a problem. If the Trudeau government gets in, we're quite confident a small group of people will start the departure by the end of the year. So that's, I think we need to see a few people go and everyone else will kind of feel a bit hopeful. Apart from that, there's no other pathway. So we are concerned for the 24 men in BITA. They're extremely, extremely sick, and I don't exaggerate. So we hope to visit the Minister, Karen Andrews, who, in my view, is a Dutton in a dress, and I'll say it again and again and again because she's so conservative, but I think we need to try. The reality is that some men at BITA are approved to go to the US, but the longer they're kept in immigration detention, they will be offloaded. They will not even be allowed to travel. They're too unwell. 3 years ago, a Rohingya man was approved to go to the US and was offloaded by IOM. He just couldn't travel. And the US said, we don't want him. So the longer you keep people in immigration detention, it really makes no sense. On one hand, you want people to accept the US. On the other hand, you're not going to release them. So that's a fight we have to do. There are some people in community detention, which means you have no work rights, you have no study rights if you're over 18, you are in a house paid for, subsidized by the government, and you get health care, not through Medicare, but through the service, immigration service provider, IHMS. So there are some people in that holding pattern. And then, of course, there are a whole heap of people released into community from Kangaroo Point and BITA on bridging visas. And they're called final departure bridging visas, which gives you full work rights, but look after yourself. So in March, 50 men from Kangaroo Point were released, and the community has banded together to help them find accommodation, or subsidize their accommodation, and help them find work. So that's the current situation.